Hi guys, my name's Sophia. I like to read. Let's get into it. Today we'll be diving into Towles, A Gentleman in Moscow, which is a story about resilience, dignity, and history unfolding in a single hotel. So I don't want to spoil the book for those who want to read it, so I'll keep this short, but basically the main idea of the story is that it takes place in the USSR in 1922. And the main character is Count Alexander Rostov, and he's basically sentenced to house arrest because of his noble blood. And so he is confined to the Metropol Hotel in Moscow, which is like this super luxurious metropolitan hotel. And this is actually quite ironic because he was already living there and they literally just changed his room. So yeah, like house arrest, yay. This is something I'll be exploring later in the video, but basically the government and like the system in general tries to deprecate and belittle the Count, but in the end he finds meaning in his condition, so like all these efforts to like sabotage him are useless. And so like while the USSR is making history and all that, Alexander finds meaning in his life at the Metropol, and he learns life lessons and he makes lasting friendships, and he just like in general strengthens his spirit. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the novel. Let's talk themes. I feel like the most obvious theme when it comes to this novel is looking at history through a personal perspective, because as someone who is absolutely fascinated by history, I know what it's like to get a very broad overview of what happened and why it was important, but never getting like a personal narrative. So if we take a look at the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, we know about the exile of the kulaks, for example, but we don't totally know like what those people were going through, what they felt, what their story was, and were given a transcript of Alexander's court case in the prologue of the book, where he's condemned simply because of his noble upbringing, which in itself is considered a crime against the regime. So one would imagine that the Count did something, I don't know, like treasonous, like he was like outspoken, like I don't know, something like super bad. But no, he literally, he's just a noble. And I think getting all the sides of the story is important as someone who values history, but also someone who is interested in literature, because it's also very important to know like the different facets of a narrative. Which is why I think this book is so important, because it really gives a spin on this part of history. I feel like this also plays into a critique of like extremist movements and revolutions, because they tend to paint everything in either black or white. Like they talk in absolutes. They want to, like, it's very tribal. It's us and then it's them, and so that tends to radicalize people, which is something that we can see happening in the book, because it's by establishing a common enemy that these groups tend to rise to power. And so I think that is extremely interesting. The second theme I want to talk about is the meaning of life as a path to freedom. So let's talk about it. As I've mentioned before, Alexander is confined to the hotel for decades, and yet he's never had a dull moment. In fact, he actually seems to enjoy his life at the Metropol. Why? Because he's cultivated these deep, meaningful relationships with the people around him that give his life purpose. Now, he's still caged in, but he's probably freer than the people who are living their lives outside the hotel. Isn't that kind of funny? This emotional connection shows that freedom isn't only physical. By having all these people that he cares about and vice versa around him, it's like he has this whole new realm of possibilities. Not only has the Count found meaning in his new circumstances, he's maintained his dignity, he remains resilient and strong. Apart from what that says about the strength of his relationships, I'd like to connect this to something broader, to something that is characteristic of all human beings. Apart from us being social people, this shows that we have this amazing characteristic, and it's being able to adapt to whatever life throws at you. Lastly, I want to talk about something that is constantly brought up and thought about given the historical context of the book, and this is the concept of progress. Towles doesn't present progress as simple or straightforward. Instead, he shows two very different perspectives. We have the idea that destruction is essential to the progress of a nation, in the sense that progress is tied to erasing the old, and even if that means destroying the beauty of history. I would say this is a very Soviet idea of progress, to sacrifice the past for what could be in the future. But we're also given another way to think about progress. So in a static environment, evolution slows down theoretically. But as you well know, environments never stay still. So change forces adaptation. Therefore, progress isn't about destruction. It's about resilience. It's about learning to adapt, learning to thrive no matter what changes come our way. So, Towles invites us to reflect on the implications of progress. Should we tear down the past, or should we find new ways to live with change while preserving what gives life and society meaning and a concrete identity? Okay, so now, if you want to know what I thought about the book, the time has come. Okay. So I'm going to talk about, you guys should know that I get super involved in whatever book I read. Like, I get so emotional when I read books. And honestly, I feel like that just says that the author is doing their job. But in this book, there was a passage that felt particularly impactful. And for those of you who haven't read it yet, I am so sorry because this is literally so random. But if you do end up reading it, like, I promise it will all make sense. So a brief explanation. Basically, Alexander has this friend. It's his best friend, Mishka. So he's a writer and he is working for this newspaper, right? And they were thinking of publishing this super famous writer's letters. And his editor decided to make this decision to cut out a specific part of one of the letters. And so, well, Mishka ended up doing it. And the part was about bread. And so Mishka ended up doing it. However, he then wrote a book in protest of that specific excerpt he had to take out. And it's like so beautiful. So he basically takes parts of like literature that mentions bread, and it goes from the Bible all the way to like modern Russian literature. And so it's like these tiny sentences that talk about bread, and I kid you not, I started crying. I know, I started crying because of bread. Like I literally annotated all this thing about bread, and I think I even left like a tear stain on the page because it was just so impactful, like the cultural and literary significance of bread. It was like so jarring because like who would have thought bread? Like bread is something so trivial, something like normal, but that's what makes it such a cultural staple in Russia and around the world. And then to take out something that you would have taken for granted and making it into something that is like, it's universal, it's something that's shared by everyone. So that was so impactful. And yeah, thank you, Mishka, for that literary masterpiece that made me cry. But anyway, that's what I love about this book. It captures both the humor and wit of Count Rostov because he's endlessly charming, but the author also contrasts this with tender and reflective moments. So it's entertaining, but it's also really moving. Something I enjoy doing when I read is finding my favorite quote in a book. So the way I choose this is either like something that's like really impacted me, or like a lesson I can learn, something like that. So in this case, it would be, for what matters in life is not whether we receive a round of applause. What matters is whether we have the courage to venture forth despite the uncertainty of acclaim. So the reason why I chose this quote as my favorite one is because I feel like we focus too much on like pleasing others, doing things in order to like get people's attention, and I feel like that makes us lose sight of what we actually want to do, of like searching for the meaning in our lives. And to do that, you shouldn't care about what others think of you. You shouldn't care about like always trying to achieve stuff. Like when you're on your quest for meaning, like you're obviously gonna fail at times. Like it's inevitable. And when you do that, you shouldn't and like focus too much on what others want rather than what you truly want to do. So our verdict is, drum roll please, 5 out of 5 stars. I would strongly recommend this book because it's one of those rare books that can make you laugh, make you reflect, and even make you cry for bread. So if you enjoy stories that balance humor with history and have something meaningful to say about life, then this book is absolutely worth your time. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to like and subscribe and comment. Please let me know what you think about the book. And don't forget to stick around because next time I'll be diving into The Great Gatsby. So happy reading. Bye!